Hello my friends, welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. I'm Lindy and I'm kind of like a magpie in that I'm interested in all kinds of things, especially bright shiny new things, things that I hear other people talking about, books. I'm really into books and reading, so if you are too, you're in the right place. I finished 5 books since my last video and I abandoned 4. Like in the past week I DNF'd 4. I don't usually talk about DNFs, but I think I'm going to talk about them in this video. But before I get to all that, I'm going to talk about a little bit of what's been happening in my life. I've had a wonderful visit from the booktuber Marilyn Mendoza. She was here in Victoria with her daughter Junette. We had a great time talking about books and traveling and other things that we have in common. I am going to include some scenes, I think at the end of this video, of our trip to Butchart Gardens. One of the things we did was a little walk to the closest little free library. It's 350 steps from my house and it's built into the side of a concrete wall. Yeah, so cool. And one of the books that Marilyn pulled out had a note on the inside. I always love ephemera. This particular note said that the book was not bad.
Well, you gonna read it? It's not bad.
No, I'm not gonna read it.
Oh, and I did find a book for myself in that little free library. Marilyn didn't find anything that she wanted to take home with her, but I am very pleased about one that I found. I can't even remember the title, but it was a collection by Indigenous authors. I will pop in the information here because I didn't bring it outside with me today. And the other thing that I've been doing besides visiting is I started a new knitting project. I am going to make myself a vest out of baby alpaca. 14 balls of this beautiful yarn was given to me by a friend in Edmonton. She was clearing out the estate of a friend of hers who had died. And originally I thought, I have so much yarn, I probably should make a sweater, but I think I might need all of the yarn just for this vest. So it's a good thing I started out with a smaller project. I wasn't too far along in it and I'd already used up an entire 50-gram ball of this yarn. I was like 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches, and I decided I think I should try this on and see how it's going to fit. So these barber cords come in really handy for something like trying on a garment. I was so glad that I stopped at that point because it was going to be huge. It's not the yarn that was recommended in the pattern. They recommended a bamboo yarn, but I had the same stitch gauge, so I thought, yeah, this is going to work, size-wise. I ended up switching to 2 sizes smaller, so I had to undo what I had done so far. I've started again, and I'll be much happier with this new size. Time will tell. I'll talk more about it in my next video, I think. So now on to bookish talk. The Stephen Leacock Medal is an award for Canadian humour writing, and books of any genre can qualify. So when the long list came out, I saw that I had read 2 of them. Rick Mercer's memoir, The Road Years, which I quite liked. And the other one is this middle grade novel, Simon Sort of Says, by Aaron Bow. And I was really hoping for this one to win, but it did not make the short list. If you're interested in what I had to say about Simon Sort of Says or the road years, I'm going to link the videos where I talked about them in the description box down below. So look for them there. Now, so the short list is 3 books, and I happened to be at the library and saw that in the fast reads, these are 1-week loans of popular books, one of the books was there, The Librarianist by Patrick DeWitt. I loved his book, The Sisters Brothers, and I quite liked Under Major Domo Minor. Wasn't so crazy about the Paris exit, and so I hadn't been inclined to pick up The Librarianist, but since it was on this Leacock Medal shortlist, hey, why not? So The Librarianist is about a retired librarian named Bob who decides to volunteer at a seniors facility. Some seniors are there as residents, and they also have day guests who need somebody to watch them during the day. So many of these people have dementia or something like that, and Bob decided that he was going to go and read to them. That project did not go well, and I thought that because of my former work in a library, I would actually get along with this book, but I used to do a reading program at the library for adults with cognitive disabilities, and it was such an enriching experience for me to have this regular interaction with these people. And maybe that's why I didn't find Bob's experiences funny. I don't know. I mean, this book is up for a humor award, and I didn't find anything funny. And like, maybe some parts vaguely amusing, but maybe the behavior of some of the residents there might be funny to some people. I just feel for individuals who are having trouble coping. Did not find it funny. I was 98 pages in. I still had another day. I could have finished it because I was a third of the way through. I had another day before I needed to return it. When I realized, maybe I'll just skip and see what happens at the end. And I realized I don't even care what happens at the end. So I just returned it. So that's one DNF. And then for Springathon. Springathon is a booktube event hosted by Natalie of Curious Reader, Heidi of My Reading Life, Doris of Aldi Books, and Emma of Cup of Books. I'll include all their information down below. I really love nature writing, so this readathon is right up my alley. And I picked up Otter Country by Miriam Darlington. She's a British writer who has been obsessed with otters since her childhood, and I'm interested in otters. I thought this would be right up my alley. There's a chapter where she talks about Gavin Maxwell's book, Ring of Bright Water, and another chapter where she talks about Tarka the otter, which was written by Henry Williamson. I did read Tarka the otter when I was a kid. Maybe that's what got me interested in otters as well. In the section where she talks about Ring of Bright Water, I learned things about Gavin Maxwell, the fact that he was gay, for one thing, and that there was a poet who was sweet on him, who lived nearby. Maxwell used her poetry in the epigraph, did not credit her. Kathleen Raine is that poet's name, by the way. So in this book, Darlington is documenting a year in her life. So she's an adult at this point with a daughter who's of school age, and they live in Devon, and Darlington keeps looking for otters and finds some signs, but they're pretty elusive. They almost went extinct in England, and perhaps credit is due to writers like Henry Williamson and Gavin Maxwell for why they captured the public interest, and efforts started being made to conserve their species. I'm not sure why or what exactly it is about this book and the writing that just, I just lost interest again about a third of the way through. I just had enough of it, and I wasn't going to force myself to read it, so that was DNF number 2. And then I started listening to a collection of essays by Ursula Le Guin, and I expected to be really engaged by these. I have enjoyed Le Guin's novels, and I've also enjoyed her essays in the past. This one is called Dancing at the Edge of the World, and these are actually speeches, essays, and reviews that she wrote between 1976 and 1987. And I listened to the first 3. The audiobook is 11 hours long, and I thought, they're okay, but I think for me, it was just, I was in the wrong mood for listening to those. So I DNF'd that one. And I went on to the audiobook of Maggie Nelson reading her own work, Bluets. Now this is 240 short pieces that are sort of a blend of autobiography and philosophy and poetry. And I have really enjoyed Maggie Nelson in the past, but these short pieces, they just didn't work in audio for me. I am going to read this in print because it's the kind of writing where I want to linger over the language and reread sections, not just listen to it once, but it's going to take me a while to kind of grasp everything that she's saying. So this was just the wrong format. So after an hour, like a whole audiobook is 2 hours long, I listened to half of it and I decided, no, I want it in print. So that was a DNF. The print version, by the way, is only about 99 pages long. So those were my 4 DNFs. Now I'm going to tell you about a book that I finished, 300 Arguments by Sarah Manguso. Now, this one is also written in short fragments, just little bits like that. And print is definitely the way to go. I was reading it just a few pages at a time until I got to about the halfway point. And suddenly, I just wanted to read it all the way through. Manguso writes about her writing and just various philosophical thoughts. And I have to read some to give you an idea. Worry is impatience for the next horror. I wish I'd known at 21 when I developed a chronic illness and became suddenly alienated from my peers that over the decades, one by one, all of them would come to join me on my island. If you go to Paris, you won't find Paris. You'll find yourself in Paris. Ditto anywhere else. You might as well stay home. There, where the surrounding environment fades to neutral, you'll really find yourself, but only if you're really looking. I keep 3 kinds of books: those I want to read, those I want to reread, And those I want to reopen just to confirm how bad they are. I'd love this because I keep books that I want to reread, and I have a shelf of books that I haven't yet read. And all the rest of my books I find new homes for, because I read about a book a day. I mostly read library books. There's just no way that I would have space in my house to keep all the books that I read, nor would I be able to afford all of that. But the idea of keeping bad books just to confirm how bad they are, that reminds me of my friend Sean, who I think does something along those lines. And there's a part where she writes about writing these bits. She says, I used to write these while playing hooky on what I hoped would be my magnum opus. Assigning myself to write 300 of them was like forcing myself to chain smoke until I puked. But it didn't work. I didn't puke. And I didn't puke either. I picked this up for Gray in May, a booktube event that was hosted by two Sarahs, Sarah of Roadworthy and Sarah Eyes on Indie. Graywolf Press is celebrating its 50th anniversary, so for Gray in May, I read something by Graywolf Press. I will link more information down below if you want to know more about Gray in May. So these next 4 books that I'm going to tell you about are all audiobooks. I did a lot of listening. First, I was listening to audiobooks while I was cleaning my house in preparation for guests. I listened to audiobooks while I am knitting, so had a lot of listening time in the past week. First is Restoring the Kinship Worldview. Indigenous Voices introduce 28 precepts for rebalancing life on planet Earth, and it's by Wahinkpe Topa, which means 4 arrows, and Darcia Narvaez. The audiobook is read by the authors and the grandson of 4 Arrows, whose name is Sage Ryan. I really like the structure of this book. So there are 28 chapters started, and each one starts with a passage from a speech or some writing by an Indigenous leader like Robin Wall Kimmerer and Winona LaDuke and Basil Johnson, Paula Gunn Allen. And then the 2 authors have a conversation talking about that precept. The precepts are things like respect for gender fluidity, emphasis on community welfare, the fact that humans are part of the natural world and that humor is something that's essential. The precept of non-interference was really interesting to me. So an example in that section was about an Indigenous style of parenting, which is allowing a child to make mistakes, make their own decisions. And the author Narvaez is somebody who does interdisciplinary research on early childhood experiences and their effects on how they behave as adults. And the other author, by the way, Wahinkpe Topa, was made a relative of the Oglala Lakota. So he's not Indigenous himself. His other name is Don Trent Jacobs, and he lives part-time in Mexico and part-time on Vancouver Island, where I live. And he is a professor specializing in Indigenous worldview and alternative forms of education. Lots of interesting ideas in that audiobook. Next up is a novel that I just loved. It's called The Fox Wife by Yangsze Choo. The audiobook is read by the author. Chinese is her first language, and so the Chinese words and phrases in the book, it was good to hear them pronounced by her. Choo is Malaysian of Chinese descent, born in the Philippines. She was raised in Thailand and Germany and Japan and Singapore, and now lives in California. I have read a couple of her earlier novels, The Ghost Bride and The Night Tiger. So this one, Fox Wife, it's told in alternating voices, and it starts out in Manchuria in the year 1908. So one voice is Bao, who's a detective, and he has a special ability that he can detect falsehoods. He can tell if somebody's lying. And he is investigating the death of a young woman who froze to death on a doorstep. And the other voice is that of Snow, who is a fox spirit, shapeshifter. And she is tracking down somebody that she believes is responsible for the death of her child. So she's on a quest. So as you can tell, there are folkloric elements in this novel, as well as mystery or detective elements. Totally engaging. The other two books that I read by Yangsze Choo, I gave 4 stars to. This book was a 5-star read. This one, I feel like she really hit her stride, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So there's a character in The Fox Wife who is very afraid of people without shadows. He might be seeing things, but he has this big fear of people without shadows. And in this next book, strange beings with strange shadows comes up. So this next book is called The Brides of High Hill. It's by Ni Vo. And you can see on the cover that there are foxes. So that's another tie to The Fox Wife. Ni Vo is a queer Vietnamese American writer, and the central character in this novel is a non-binary cleric named Chi. It's part of the Singing Hills cycle, book number 5. And you don't need to read these in order. You get all of the details that you need about Chi and his companion, who's a hoopoe bird, no matter which story that you start with. So in this one, it's kind of a gothic mystery with folkloric creatures, and it's novella length, not very long, a nice tasty little tidbit. If you like fantasy, I do recommend it. But I'm saving the very best audiobook for last, and that is The Light Eaters. It's subtitled How the Unseen World of Plant Intelligence Offers a New Understanding of Life on Earth. It's by Zoë Schlanger. She was a science writer specializing in climate change and environmental pollution, and she got pretty burnt out by writing about those topics, and then started reading science reports about plant studies and the question about plant intelligence, plant behaviors, things that are showing that plants maybe have agency. And so she became really enthused about pursuing these lines of research, and it's fascinating stuff. Oh, she traveled to places like Chile and Germany and northwest coast rainforest in the US and a ginkgo forest in the southern US, and found out these astonishing things about plants. Wow. A read-alike for this is An Immense World by Ed Yong. So if you like that book, I think you would really like this one as well. There are so many tantalizing things that are still being discovered, but it seems like plants are able to hear somehow. They're able to distinguish a caterpillar chewing and put up defenses, chemical defenses in their leaves to make the caterpillars stop chewing them and instead look around at the other caterpillars and cannibalize the other caterpillars instead. The plant communication is something that's become more well known, but details like the fact that there seems to be back channels, so plants of the same species can communicate with each other in ways that the other species can't understand, but they can also communicate on a larger scale if they need to kind of combine forces against predators, whether they're insect pests or larger animals. They can communicate with organisms that are in the soil. Some plants are able to store memories. Some plants are able to count. There's this amazing vine that grows in Chile called the boquilla, and it's like a chameleon. It's able to copy leaves of other plants. And this is not something that's developed over time, over evolution, but in real time, it can be growing over more than one plant, and in the section where it's on one tree, the leaves will copy, the boquilla leaves will copy that tree's leaves, and in another place, the same vine, the leaves will copy a different shape of leaf. It could be shiny leaves, or matte, or big and leathery, or thin and wispy, or they even found that a maidenhair fern, it could copy the leaves of that. So it blends in with other plants. Now, as to the why it does it or how it does it, that is yet to be determined, but oh, so amazing. I will include a brief video down below if you want to know more about the boquilla vine. There is just so much amazing stuff in this book, Light Eaters. So yeah, can you tell how excited I am? After I finished listening to it, I started all over again because, wow. So, another book for nature writing for Springathon. The Springathon event was just for the first 2 weeks of May, but as far as I'm concerned, Springathon should continue and continue and continue because we live in an amazing world. And speaking of amazing worlds, I'm going to end this video with some scenes of flowers and gardens that Marilyn and her daughter Junette visited with me while they were here. And I want to thank you so much for watching. So please say hello in the comments down below and go out and pay attention to the plants around you because plants are amazing. Bye for now. See you soon.
That is really nice.
No, not natural light. You're an upside down.
对，先做大学那边，先首先。